Welcome. Today we're taking a deep plunge into a really remarkable book. It gave this unprecedented, almost fly-on-the-wall look inside a modern American presidency. Bob Woodward's Fear, Trump in the White House.
That's right.
And this isn't just some dry political analysis, it's more like a gripping narrative. It's woven from firsthand accounts, people really close to the decisions. It reveals the inner workings and the pretty extraordinary challenges of that White House.
Absolutely. And our mission today really is to pull out the most revealing insights from Woodward's reporting. We're focusing on those fascinating dynamics inside the White House, the president's very distinct leadership style, and those often unseen struggles over really crucial policy decisions. We'll look at how staff tried to manage what they saw as, dangerous impulses, and how the president's whole approach kind of reshaped the executive branch itself. What makes this deep dive so compelling, I think, is just the sheer level of detail and the multiple perspectives the book gives us. It's a unique window into history as it was happening.
Okay, so let's unpack this. There's a really eye-opening anecdote right near the start of Woodward's account, isn't there? It kind of lays bare this central theme, the extraordinary lengths staff felt they had to go to, acting as these sort of internal guardrails.
Right, the guardrails.
Yeah, trying to steer the presidency away from what they saw as dangerous impulses. Woodward tells this story about Gary Cohn, who was the top economic advisor, how he discreetly removed a draft letter from the Resolute desk. This was early on. And this letter, apparently, would have just unilaterally terminated the United States-Korea Free Trade Agreement. Chorus.
Which sounds maybe dry, but it was huge.
Exactly. Cohn, as Woodward details it, was just appalled. Because Chorus wasn't only a trade deal, it was like a foundation of the economic and military alliance, crucial for top-secret intelligence operations.
Yeah, the intelligence piece is key.
Think about this. The U.S. had 28,500 troops there in South Korea. That presence let them detect North Korean missile launches in, 7 seconds?
Just 7 seconds. Compared to 15 minutes from Alaska? A massive difference.
A huge difference in a crisis. So withdrawing could unravel the whole relationship, risk vital intelligence, destabilize the whole region. This one act, it just highlights this immediate fundamental tension. Staff literally acting to prevent what they saw as, potentially catastrophic presidential actions.
And Woodward quotes someone saying, there were sometimes a couple of steps back from the edge and other times we would fall over the edge. It paints a picture of constant crisis management.
That act by Cohn is stunning, really.
Yeah.
Taking a paper off the president's desk, it makes you ask, what was the environment like that made someone feel they had to do that?
Right. And Woodward spends a lot of time explaining that. He describes this pervasive sense of crisis inside the White House. He actually calls it a nervous breakdown of the executive power of the most powerful country in the world. Yeah. He paints this picture where staff felt this profound obligation, to purposefully block what they believed were the president's most dangerous impulses. Even hiding documents. It's a striking portrayal of a leader who, in Woodward's reporting, was seen by staff as emotionally overwrought, mercurial, and unpredictable. It created this atmosphere where traditional governance felt like it was constantly under threat from the inside.
And this wasn't something that just suddenly appeared after inauguration, was it? Woodward takes us back to the 2016 campaign. He shows that many of these impulses, or at least this, let's say, unconventional style, it was there much earlier. What were some of those early signs Woodward uncovered?
Yeah, that's a really important point in Fear. What's striking about those campaign days is how Woodward portrays candidate Trump as, deeply removed from what most people would see as basic politics.
Like what?
Well, for instance, Woodward details these conversations. You have figures like David Bossie, a pretty seasoned Republican operative, trying to coach Trump on really basic political positions. Bossie apparently told Trump flat out, you can't win a Republican primary being pro-choice. And Trump insisted, I'm against abortion, I'm pro-life. But then, when Bossie confronted him about his own voting record...
Which showed?
Well, it showed he'd only voted in one primary, but Trump adamantly claimed he voted every time.
Despite the record.
Despite the record. Then there's that kind of amusing anecdote where Trump kept insisting he was a popularist, not a populist, even though Steve Bannon kept correcting him.
Okay.
And maybe most surprising, Bossie pointed out that something like 80% of Trump's past political donations had gone to Democrats. And Trump's reaction, according to Woodward, was genuine astonishment. He said, there's records of that.
Really astonished.
That's how Woodward portrays it. He uses these moments to show a candidate whose, quote, unique asset was being totally removed from the political process. This sort of fundamental disconnect, as Fear depicts it, it helps us understand why similar dynamics where basic political or policy knowledge seemed like a constant hurdle played out later in the White House. It really sets the stage.
It certainly paints a picture. A political outsider may be less concerned with traditional norms, more with his own instincts. But then the narrative shifts, right? With Steve Bannon coming in as campaign CEO in August 2016, the book describes the campaign then as just chaos. How did Bannon try to fix that? What was his plan?
Bannon's arrival, yeah, that's a real turning point in Woodward's telling. He apparently reached out to Trump directly, said something like, "This thing is embarrassing in the paper. We can win this. It's Hillary Clinton, for God's sake."
And Trump was receptive.
He was already upset with Paul Manafort's performance, reportedly called him a stiff, said he had no energy. Bannon's core strategy, as Woodward lays it out, was about simplifying and sharpening the message, making it about a central conflict.
Which was?
Basically, the elites in the country are comfortable with managing the decline, and the working people in the country are not. They do want to make America great again. He focused on these clear, powerful themes: stop mass illegal immigration, bring back manufacturing jobs, get out of pointless foreign wars. He was about branding Trump as the change agent, the disruptor. And Bannon, despite the polls, was apparently convinced they could win. He believed every underlying number is with us. That shaped this very unique, very aggressive path forward.
And speaking of aggressive paths and challenges, the book really digs into the Access Hollywood tape crisis. This was the tape, for anyone who needs reminding, where Trump bragged very crudely about groping women. How did the campaign leadership like Priebus and Bannon react? And Melania drama?
Oh, that was a huge moment. Woodward details this intense internal drama. You had Reince Priebus, who was the RNC chair then, telling Trump immediately, "It's over." He apparently suggested Trump drop out, prepare for a massive loss, even floated a Pence-Condi Rice ticket.
Wow, really? Pence Rice?
That's what Woodward reports. But Bannon argued the absolute opposite. He was firm. That's never going to happen. Trump was a rock star now. His thinking was that Trump had built this following that would accept him, flaws and all.
And Melania Trump's reaction.
Also pivotal, according to the book, she apparently dismissed the idea of him apologizing directly, said something like, "No way, no. Her public statement later, calling it locker room talk, became a key part of their defense strategy.
And it wasn't just defense, was it? Woodward talks about how they went on the attack. That led to that really extraordinary moment before one of the debates.
Absolutely. Escalation was the key. The book talks about Rudy Giuliani doing the full Ginsburg, appearing on all the Sunday talk shows to defend Trump, a real media blitz.
Right.
But then Trump apparently wasn't happy, berated him later, saying, "Rudy, you're a baby. I've never seen a worse defense of me in my life." Yeah. So this dissatisfaction, plus Bannon's belief that the only way was to escalate, led to that scorched earth tactic. Just before the second debate, Bannon organized this Facebook Live event. He brought Bill Clinton's accusers. Juanita Broaddrick famously said, "Mr. Trump may have said some bad words, but Bill Clinton raped me and Hillary Clinton threatened me."
A stunning move.
It really was. And Woodward uses this to show the campaign's willingness to just maximize aggression. It also tells you a lot about Trump's view of loyalty and how he expected people to defend him fiercely.
So moving from that campaign drama into the White House itself, Woodward shows how these same challenges just continued, right? Constant battles over core policy. How did the early days of the transition, the actual governing, compare to that chaos Bannon described in the campaign? And what do people like Gary Cohn learn quickly about the president's grasp of, say, basic economics?
Yeah, Woodward's account of the early White House is something else. Bannon himself apparently looked back at the transition period and called it the island of misfit toys.
Misfit toys.
Yeah, describing it as just chaotic, totally unprepared for actually forming a government, no real plan. And on economics, Gary Cohn apparently had this moment where he realized what Woodward calls Trump's lack of basic understanding. The president suggested dealing with the deficit by saying, "Just run the presses, print money."
Print money, seriously.
That's the quote in the book. You can imagine, for an economic advisor, that's a huge red flag. And layered on top of all these domestic challenges was the Russia investigation. Always there. Woodward details that January 6th briefing where the intelligence chiefs presented the Steele dossier to Trump, including those salacious claims.
Right, that must have been tense.
Trump was clearly rattled, according to Woodward. And Clapper, the director of national intelligence, called the briefing itself a landmark product. It was this moment where the intel community directly confronted the incoming president with really controversial stuff about his campaign.
It really shows how the early operations were shaped not just by policy debates, but by the president's personal reactions, right? Often completely diverging from the usual process or staff advice. And speaking of divergence, Woodward really explores this constant tension over foreign policy and trade. Huge national security implications. You mentioned chorus earlier, but the book shows this was a persistent thing with the president, even after briefings from top people like Jim Mattis. What was Trump's argument against these alliances, and how did his team react?
It's a central conflict in fear, definitely. Trump's push to pull out of chorus, for example, just kept coming up. Even after Mattis apparently painstakingly explained its strategic value, the 28,500 troops, the special access programs, highly classified stuff critical for detecting North Korean missiles in seconds. Mattis called it a great national security bargain.
And Trump's response?
According to Woodward, it was blunt. I wouldn't need a fucking thing, and I'd sleep like a baby.
Wow.
Yeah. And similarly with NATO, he constantly hammered on allies not paying their fair share. He saw them almost as protectorates and collective defense as a sucker play. This whole transactional view, it left Mattis reportedly exasperated and alarmed. Woodward quotes sources saying Mattis told associates the president acted like a 5th or 6th grader sometimes.
A 5th or 6th grader. That's right. That's an astonishing assessment from a Secretary of Defense about his commander-in-chief. What does that reveal about the depth of the divide Woodward found?
It's incredibly telling, isn't it? It just highlights this fundamental clash of philosophies running right through the book. You've got Trump's very transactional America First view, often focused on immediate financial costs or perceived unfairness. And then you have the traditional foreign policy establishment view, prioritizing alliances, long-term stability, that complex web of relationships built over decades.
And how did that clash play out in real time? Like, say, the Syria chemical attack in April 2017.
Woodward gives a vivid example there. Trump apparently reacted viscerally to the attack, saying, let's fucking kill him, referring to Assad.
Right.
But Mattis made sure the response was a more measured, conventional airstrike, focused on degrading specific capabilities, not, assassination. Bannon, true to his America First, apparently dismissed even that strike as just a pinprick, called it very Clinton-esque. So you see this dynamic constantly. Staff trying to sometimes outright divert the president's ideas. Woodward repeatedly describes Cohn and Porter trying to distract him from chorus or NAFTA, and again, even removing documents from his desk.
It sounds less like a policy team and more like an arena. Constant internal struggle.
Yeah.
And this conflict wasn't just about policy, it was personal too, right? Between the staff themselves. What did Woodward reveal about how key figures like Priebus or John Kelly saw the inner circle?
Oh, absolutely. Fear paints this really vivid, often quite harsh picture of the internal White House world. Reince Priebus, the first chief of staff, apparently concluded that Trump surrounded himself not with a team of rivals like Lincoln, but with natural predators.
Natural predators.
That's the term Woodward uses from Priebus. He described Ivanka and Jared, the president's daughter and son-in-law, as squatters with a portfolio without experience. And Bannon, despite his influence, as a strategist in an operation that had none. And the book reveals deep frustration from others, too. John Kelly, who replaced Priebus as chief of staff, is quoted privately calling Trump an idiot, saying things like, we're in crazy town. I don't even know why any of us are here. This is the worst job I've ever had.
That's stunning to hear reported.
It is. And Gary Cohn, trying to guide Trump on economics, bringing charts about trade deficits or tariffs, he was often just met with Trump insisting, I know I'm right. If you disagree with me, you're wrong. So yeah, Woodward portrays this White House where normal processes were constantly bypassed and where personal loyalty and just appearances often seem to matter more than traditional expertise or consensus.
Those internal dynamics are just fascinating, deeply unsettling. And the personal toll, the philosophical divides, it seems like it all really came to a head during the Charlottesville controversy in August 2017. That became such a defining moment. What did Woodward uncover about Trump's reaction, and how did it hit officials like Gary Cohn?
Charlottesville was definitely a major crisis point, both for the country and inside the administration, and Woodward gives it significant attention in fear. Trump's initial statement condemning violence on many sides, which famously didn't single out the white supremacists, that drew huge criticism.
Right, I remember Senator Rubio tweeting about it.
Exactly. Rubio tweeted something like, very important for the nation to hear at POTUS describe events for what they are, a terror attack by #white supremacists. And for Gary Cohn, this was apparently a breaking point. Woodward writes he was very uncomfortable, nearly resigned.
Nearly resigned over that?
That's what the book reports. He apparently expressed this deep distress that Citizens standing up for equality and freedom can never be equated with white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and the KKK. Cohn eventually went public with his views in an interview, which itself caused waves. It just highlighted the deep, deep divisions the event created, even right inside the president's team, and Trump's resistance to what he saw as, political correctness. It underscored these really difficult moral dilemmas for people serving him.
And hanging over all of this constantly was the Mueller investigation. Woodward chronicles how this probe became this huge distraction, right?
Yeah.
Consuming the president's energy, shaping how he saw his own power. What did fear reveal about how Trump felt privately about it? And what about his lawyer, John Dowd's advice on testifying?
Oh, the Mueller probe looms large throughout fear. It was this constant source of frustration, almost an obsession for the president. Woodward quotes Trump telling his lawyer, John Dowd, that the investigation was an enormous burden, that it interfered with foreign affairs. He said, "It's embarrassing to be in the middle of the deal," and the guy says, "Hey, Donald, are you going to be around? It's like a kick in the nuts." He kept insisting, "I am the president. I can fire anybody that I want. They can't be investigating me for firing Comey." Woodward describes Trump's behavior sometimes straying into paranoid territory, reminiscent of Nixon's final days, apparently, convinced they're out to get me.
And the idea of testifying.
Dowd strongly advised against it, called it a trap, basically a perjury trap. He urged Trump to protect the office itself for future presidents. But Trump, always conscious of how things looked, argued back, "The President of the United States cannot be seen taking the fifth."
Right, the optics.
Exactly. So Woodward's depiction of the Mueller investigation really shows how it just consumed Trump's emotional energy, as he puts it, and tapped into this deep-seated fear of being seen as weak or somehow compromised.
So Bob Woodward's fear, Trump in the White House, it really leaves you with this profound sense of just constant internal battle, this incredibly unconventional approach to governing. From staff literally hiding documents, as you said, to these intense policy clashes driven by really strong, often conflicting personalities and beliefs. The book just shows a presidency in constant flux where the ways of doing things were always being tested, often just tossed aside.
Indeed. It's a rare, pretty unfiltered glimpse into those complex interactions, those competing philosophies that shape decisions at the absolute highest levels, and it really prompts us to think, doesn't it? In this era we live in with so much information, so much political polarization, how do we as citizens tell the difference between effective governance and just perpetual conflict? And what are the long-term consequences for our institutions when, as Woodward meticulously documents in fear, personal instincts seem to consistently override established processes, override expert advice? It's a question that definitely resonates long after you finish the book.